Hello and welcome to another edition of Merlin Reviews. This review is sponsored by Dr. Pepper. Well, not really. Today I had the pleasure of viewing the next chapter in the Riddick saga, aptly named Riddick. How about that? It is a direct sequel to the Chronicles of Riddick, however it's more directly a sequel of Pitch Black. We find Riddick on a strange alien world, and there are some flashbacks which do briefly explain what happened in the previous film. Apparently Riddick taking over the Necromongers, that's basically this evil horde of demonic soul-feeding imperial bastards, who Riddick, through some weird prophecy, ended up becoming the leader of and trying to steer them away from being quite as evil, apparently didn't like his rule, so they kicked him out, and they left him for dead on this planet, after tricking him into thinking that he was going back to his home world. So Riddick is doing what he does best, being a badass, surviving on pretty much nothing, and having to deal with heat, exhaustion, poisonous gases, severe injuries, and of course horrible alien creatures. All in all, a pretty average week. Interestingly enough, Riddick does find that there is an outpost on this planet, so he goes and sends out a distress call. And there are some scanners conveniently there to say that he is Riddick and there is an even bigger bounty on his head than normal. At least that's what's implied. However, Riddick knows this. And so, not one, but two bounty hunter ships arrive and compete over who's going to take Riddick. However, one group does offer to assist the other, but they're led by kind of an evil bastard by the name of Santana, who really doesn't want their help at all. Santana is he's a prick. And it's pretty much what you'd expect it to be. Basically, Riddick is on the run and slowly picks these guys off one by one. Of course, he does offer to spare their lives and really does try to resolve things as peacefully as possible. But no one ever listens to Riddick because everybody in that universe is always out to kill him. But they'll never win because Riddick is badass. There is one interesting little twist, though. The leader of one of the groups is, in fact, the father of the character who went psycho and tried to kill Riddick and a young girl in the previous film. Riddick is captured, of course, but it turns out that there is a storm coming, and the storm is bringing all these horrible serpentine creatures up from their little hive on the ground. Riddick knows this. And because he steals the power cells that are required for both their ships to get off, he knows that he has a bargaining chip. From then on, it's basically the mercenaries and Riddick trying to survive on a hellish planet as the storm arrives, and the sea of creatures rise up to kill them all. Evil monsters. I'm not really going to say any more about the plots of the film because, well, I pretty much just gave you the whole plot anyway, but I'm not going to tell you how it ends at the very least. How do I feel about this movie? This movie is pretty good. I would dare say that it's awesome. Not quite awesome. It's somewhere in that range of being amazing and just being good. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm a pretty big fan. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a die-hard fan of Riddick. I don't know everything about him. I've read some of the comics, and of course I've seen the two previous films. I did play a little bit of the Butcher Bay video game that came out a while ago. But I love the character. I think he's really cool. I think he has a really interesting world. He's just a badass. He really carries his own franchise, and Vin Diesel was really awesome because he really, really wanted to give the fans another Riddick film because there was a demand for it, and he pretty much funded this and sponsored it more or less himself, and it took him years to do it. How would I say this film holds up? The CGI was pretty good. There was a really cool style to the film. It had a very alien feel to it, this planet they were on, some cool creatures. You could sense some alien inspiration. I mean, they weren't as good as the monsters from Pitch Black, but they were still pretty threatening. One thing I really liked about this film is that the first, 10-15 minutes is really just build-up, where Riddick is alone and there's a little bit of narration, but not really too much, which you'd expect from Riddick, and usually really overdoes that. And this film really reined that in. There wasn't a whole lot of narration. Really, you just saw Riddick trying to struggle and survive alone on this planet. There was some acknowledgement over the Chronicles of Riddick, but so kudos to them for talking about it, even though it was a big story that covered a lot of ground and it was honestly kind of messy, but they didn't ignore it, which I was kind of thinking they might do. So it was cool that they acknowledged it. Karl Urban does make an appearance. That was cool. This film is really kind of a combination of both. Like I said, it is sort of a sequel to... It is definitely a sequel to Chronicles of Riddick, but really it is more of a spiritual successor and kind of ties up some of the events from Pitch Black. And it also takes the style of that film, basically Riddick and a bunch of other colorful characters trying to survive on this planet, fighting harsh conditions and evil aliens. So if you liked Pitch Black, I think that this one is more for you than Chronicles of Riddick if you preferred that one. Though it does have some of the elements of Chronicles of Riddick. I think it definitely feels like it definitely rolled with the ball of the collective universe that they tried to build, so it does feel like it fits in the expanded universe of Chronicles of Riddick, whereas Pitch Black was really cut off and felt like it could have almost been its own thing. Even though the plot of this film is almost directly the same, there isn't quite the same intense amount of danger, and the monsters aren't as scary. It's not as much of a horror film as it's just kind of an action sci-fi adventure. But in terms of direction, I think it's probably one of the best. I think in terms of acting, it's one of the best. I think that Vin Diesel's honestly in top form as Riddick. I mean, he's pretty much just doing what he does best. I don't know if I'd say he added anything new, but there really isn't much more you need to do with Riddick. He's just an awesome badass that pretty much carries his own movie, and that's fine. But the supporting characters were good. I mean, they really didn't delve into the side characters too much, but they did stand out. I thought some of them were memorable. There were some good lines here and there, a couple good laughs. There's a cool dog that Riddick befriends and kind of tames. I'm not going to tell you what happens to the dog, but I'm sure you can imagine. You know, he is one of Riddick's friends after all, so it can't be good. Really, there isn't too much to spoil with this film. I think some of the reviews basically said that it doesn't really bring a whole lot new, and I could agree with that. It really doesn't, but it delivers on what you expect it to. And if you're a fan of the Riddick character, you're a fan of Vin Diesel, or the Riddick movies, or just really sci-fi action, you'll have a good time. I honestly think that it's not quite as good as Pitch Black in terms of the intensity of it, but then again, Pitch Black was more of a horror film, and this one wasn't trying to be. So I think Pitch Black is still the best of the films we have so far. Though, even though I liked Chronicles of Riddick, I do think this one is superior to that one. But in all fairness, Chronicles of Riddick really did try to do a lot. It tried to take it a very different direction using that character, but it was really trying to explore all these elements from the comics and Riddick's world and his story that really couldn't be jam-packed into like a 2-hour film. So it's understandable that it was messy, but I still think that it was entertaining at the very least. This one, at least, I would say is solid. I think it's the most solid of all the films. Like, there were a few convenient moments, there's some silly things, but really, if you're just looking for a good, solid action movie with some sci-fi elements, this is pretty cool, especially if you like the Riddick character. I give it a 7 out of 10, like 3.5 stars out of 5, and maybe like a solid B rating. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I would like it. I liked it. I would definitely watch it again. I'll probably own it. That's all I have to say. So yeah, guys, if you like the Riddick movies, if you're all interested, go ahead and see it if you haven't already. It's really cool. And even if you haven't, I will be honest, it's not really a great introduction because it doesn't really explain a lot. They kind of just assume you have seen the other movies. One of the kind of negatives of the film. Looking at it specifically as a sequel, there really isn't too much wrong with it. It was a pretty solid movie. It was fun. I really liked it. I'd see it again, and recommend you guys see it too. Alright guys, this was Merlin, and that was my review on Riddick. So, let me know what you guys think. If you guys like the Riddick movies, what you think about the character, did you dislike the movie at all? Yeah, all that good stuff. Peace.